Hi there, friends, and welcome back to the Why Music Podcast, the podcast where we explore different musicians and their music and different musical ideas and concepts and just really anything about music throughout history. Please make sure that you like and subscribe and follow this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, wherever you're listening to this right now. And if you ever have any ideas about a composer or a musical idea or a musician or anything to do with music that you'd love to hear on this podcast, please get in touch with me at thewhybooks@gmail.com. That's thewhybooks@gmail.com. Today, we're going to explore a musician who I'm sure many of you have probably heard of before. Someone who many people have talked about as one of the best, if not the best, composer of classical music of all time. His name was Ludwig van Beethoven. Ludwig van Beethoven was born in 1770 in Bonn, which is located in the west of Germany. Like many musicians we've already looked at, he began to play the piano at an early age, and he was taught by his father at first. Through lots of practice, he became known as a virtuoso at the piano. The story goes that his first composition was published when he was about 11 years old in 1782, and only 1 year later, when he was about 12, he got a job at the Bonn Opera, and soon after that, it's rumoured that he actually met another famous composer, someone who I'm sure many of you have heard of before, someone by the name of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So we don't actually know if Mozart and Beethoven met each other, but nonetheless, Beethoven was soon being asked to write music for many different occasions and many different people, including for the Holy Roman Emperor at the time, whose name was Leopold II. In 1792, Beethoven went to Vienna, which is in Austria, to study with another famous composer who many of you may have heard of before, a man by the name of Joseph Haydn. So I think it's worth pausing here just for a moment, because while all this was happening in Beethoven's life, the French Revolution was happening too. It might seem strange to be talking about the French Revolution while we're talking about Beethoven, but it's just for us to remember that in the lives of these composers, sometimes they don't even talk about it or it's not mentioned, but there are many things happening in the world that probably would have been affecting them at the time, even if they didn't write about it in their music. Wars, famine, and many other things were happening around that time. And so sometimes it's important for us to just take a step back and remember that these composers weren't operating in bubbles, and they were actually human beings living their lives in a world which was often full of chaos. As Beethoven continued to perform and compose, his reputation grew and grew. In the early 1800s, he wrote 3 symphonies and the only opera he would ever write in his life, called Fidelio. Then, in 1808, this was played for the very first time. This is the opening of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and it's probably one of the most recognized pieces of music in Western classical music history. How about this? This piece is called Piano Sonata No. 14, or as many people called it, Moonlight Sonata. It has been covered and arranged by many different people in bands such as Atmosphere, En Vogue, and Alicia Keys. Have a quick listen to this version, which was produced by the multi-instrumentalist Marcus Miller. So, back to Beethoven himself. It was around about this time that he started to experience some hearing loss, and he started to see some doctors about his condition. Unfortunately, things got worse and he was able to hear less and less over the years, but that didn't stop him from composing more music. This reminds me of the story of Jason Becker, the musician that we looked at in Season 3, Episode 2. Jason Becker was diagnosed with ALS when he was only a teenager, but that condition didn't stop him from making music. Just like Beethoven, he didn't let what was happening to him physically stop him from creating more music, obviously with the help of others. If you go and check out that episode, you'll hear a lot more about Jason Becker. Beethoven's ninth and final symphony features a melody which is also very, very well known. Have a listen to this. Because of these pieces and many others that he wrote throughout his life, Beethoven has often been called one of, if not the greatest composer of all time. While it's an understandable thing to say given how important Beethoven has been in Western classical music, I think it's also important to recognize that it's very difficult to compare someone who wrote music for many different instruments using ink and paper to someone who sits at their computer and creates beats for people to rap over. So using phrases like the greatest composer of all time is really difficult to prove, especially when we consider the fact that someone who might live in Bolivia or Australia or Thailand may not really see Beethoven in the same way as many Western Europeans might do. Nevertheless, there is no doubt that Beethoven has inspired many, many thousands, if not millions of people worldwide, people who have performed his music and people who have listened to his music too. His music has been played by so many people over the last 200 plus years that I'm pretty sure if you speak to anyone who plays in the Western classical tradition, probably played a piece of Beethoven at least once in their lifetime. Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got for today, but I really hope that you've learned a little bit more about Ludwig van Beethoven's life. Please feel free to go out and check out some of his music too. Before we go, I'm going to play a little bit of a track that you may have heard of before, a track called Für Elise, which was written by Beethoven in 1810. Sing along if you know it, and until next time, take care of yourselves, listen to some of Beethoven's music, and peace.